Hey guys, my name's Kieran, and you're listening to the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Keep up the good work, guys.
Hey travelers, we recommend you watch this episode on the Paranormal Network's YouTube channel. This episode has a presentation on a fascinating subject with visuals to make the experience much better. And if you choose to just listen, know that you will miss out on some critical parts of this episode. But for now, let's jump back into the Infinite Rabbit Hole.
Welcome back to the Infinite Rabbit Hole. I am your host tonight, Jeff. We got something a little different for everybody, something super exciting. I'm actually super excited about this. We have an awesome guest, which we'll get to in just a minute. Before we get into it, though, of course, as always, we're going to bring in the other clowns of the show. And this time, we're going to start ladies first. Kid, what is up? How are you?
You're rude. I'm not a clown.
Just a Canadian.
Rude.
Listen, I usually get the short end of the stick, so I'm dishing it out this time.
Fair. But you know what? Never mind. Canadian did nothing here, okay?
Okay.
Love
Fine.
you.
Love you too. Sorry. I take it back. Anyways, on to the next one. Jake, what is up, my friend? How you doing?
What's up, man? Just got home from work, rode the bike today. It's very, very nice weather over here in SoCal. So yeah, just having a great day and ready to get into this. I'm excited.
That's good. I'm glad you enjoy your bike rides.
For sure.
I hope you have training wheels.
No.
I don't know. It took you a long time to answer. Okay, so now we got Jeremy. I left Jeremy last this time just because Jeremy's always the one introducing us. So, you know, I figured we'd put him in the back of the bus today. And Jeremy, what's up?
That's what Cool Kids said, dude.
I guess.
I dig the shirt, by the way.
You like it?
Yeah.
I got a lot of compliments on this today.
Are you all caught up?
No, not even close.
Dude, let me spoil it for you.
I'm 3 seasons behind. That's how not caught up I am. Yeah.
How are you? Never mind. I don't.
Because it was like $9 at Walmart, and I was like, all right, I'll get it. I'll look like one of the cool kids trending, you know. So that's what I did.
But you do watch it, right?
Not since the first season.
Really?
Man,
See,
you
here's
could binge
thing.
the whole thing in a weekend. So get to it.
Oh yeah.
I know the truths of where it originated from. I know the backstory of why they even did a Stranger Things, right? So I don't have to watch the show.
There's so much there. There's the Philadelphia project. There are the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk projects. There's a little bit of everything there. It's such a good show, in my opinion. I love that. I love Stranger Things. Good stuff.
I might watch it one day.
You should.
Jeremy literally doesn't watch anything, so this is shocking to me. I'm very surprised.
I read everything. Yeah. Anyways.
Anyways, so on to the star of the evening tonight. This we got Matt from the Great Deception podcast. Matt is somebody who I've talked to many times. He's had me on his show multiple times. He's come on the Shadow Band podcast before, and Matt's gonna probably blow our minds tonight because this kind of stuff is super interesting, at least to me. So if you guys don't like it, sucks for you. I'm going to enjoy the night. But Matt, what is up, brother? It's good to see you. How you doing, man?
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey,
Absolutely.
man, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I got some fun stuff. Not many people. I hadn't heard of Star Forts, right, until probably a little over a year ago. And so I started looking into them, and I'm like, wow, these things are crazy. And then you start seeing them all over the world. And then I was like, okay, this is cool. And so a year later, I'm up to like, I don't know, I think like 100-page PowerPoint that I've collected along the way from different works and stuff we put together. So it's wild. You know, it's one of those things where, listen, if you got a closed mind, you're probably not going to like this podcast because you have to have an open mind. you have to, be a little flexible here and do some thinking, because it's always not what it seems on the surface. And that's where we're going to go tonight.
Right on. See, I'm digging this because the watchers over at the Paranormal Network, and if you're not watching this particular episode on the Paranormal Network, you're going to be doing yourself a disservice today, because Matt has brought a lot of visuals for us, and the people watching us on the Paranormal Network are going to get all the really good stuff that he has to share with us. But this is the first time that the Paranormal Network fans are seeing us step outside of the realm of the paranormal. And Jeff does a conspiracy-based podcast. I don't know exactly what to expect from you today, Matt. I've seen the topic and that's it. So I have no research done or nothing. You're catching me. I'm a blank sheet for you, man. And I'm very excited to kind of show, kind of stretch our legs a little bit here on the Paranormal Network, because it's been a while since we've done anything not paranormal, because we wanted to kind of start off with the paranormal foot forward, if you will, on the Paranormal Network. So thank you for coming on today and doing this for us. I really do appreciate this.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it does get into, I mean, this isn't going to involve Bigfoot, right? But from a paranormal standpoint, we're going to talk auras. We're going to talk frequencies. We're going to talk some things that are, some say supernatural, right? So,
right on. Yeah.
And even the creation of Star Forts, we're going to get into a little Roman gods and things like that. So this topic kind of goes all over the realm, and so far, just about anyone that listens is kind of intrigued, because it's one of those that's out there, and it's not something you're really going to learn in a textbook. So even more, it's fun.
I appreciate it. And one thing that we try to do every single episode is get Bigfoot mentioned at least once every episode. And Matt, you're starting off great, man.
Check. Box check.
Already got it. Yeah, I like to. This is just my perception of kind of like the stuff that Matt talks about. Now, Matt's done a lot of different stuff on his show, right? He's not like one train type guy, but like when I talk to Matt or when I look at Matt's list to go listen to an episode, like I kind of put Matt in the hidden history category. He's got a lot of information about, just to boil it down, like hidden history or lost history or different history stuff. So, whether we're talking about mud floods or World Fair or like the Star Fort stuff, it's not what we were taught. This is like a whole different way of looking at what his story was, right? History. So that's kind of where I put Matt in my mind. I don't know if I've ever told you that, Matt, but that's how I see you, bud. I see you as the hidden history guy. He's the golden child.
I appreciate it. It kills me in the rankings, though, man. My metrics don't quite measure up in the history category. But hey, yeah, that's what I say. I just deem it alternate history, right? There's the mainstream story that you get from the books and that you're fed in the education system, which I deem his story, and then there's our story, which is our version of it, because every story has multiple versions of it. So and as we've seen, that they tend to have an agenda sometimes to lead us to look one direction or get interested in one topic or one person, when in reality it may be another person that was more important than them. And that's kind of what we get into. I get into all sorts of stuff when it's history related. I just think, I'm sick of being lied to. My podcast is called The Great Deception Podcast. And I like to just kind of uncover and expose some untruths that we've been taught or told.
I think I'm in like the perfect opportunity, like the perfect headspace to take this stuff. I'm definitely the most closed-minded person of the hosts right here. Christian guy, and I don't believe in most of the things, right? But I've been researching giants for the last couple of weeks. And when Jeremy was just like the watchers of the Paranormal Network, right when he said the watchers, I just like Book of Enoch and the giants, and I just like, bugging out.
Well, you know what's crazy, Jake? Until about a month ago, this presentation didn't tie in with the giants. But I came across a gentleman named Paul on What the Flock TV, and he did this whole presentation on the Roman god Janus, who is supposedly the progenitor of giants, and that's where giants come from. Janus, giants, and his tie into star forts we'll get into later. But it's funny you mentioned giants because they tie into this as well.
Nice.
Awesome.
I'm stoked.
Let's do it, Matt. I'm ready.
Yeah,
all right.
Let's do it, man. Blow our minds. What is a star fort? Just do your thing, man.
All
Teach
right.
me.
So we basically what I want you to think about, and one of the themes of this is architecture is frozen music, right? And we have to kind of think about it. And one of the quotes I found is, music is liquid architecture. Architecture is frozen music. So you start thinking about that. And so, what are star forts? Okay. I had no idea what they were, but I found this map and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, they're all over the world. There's got to be something to them. And you'll find them in close to 70 nations. They vary in shape and size, as we'll see as we go through. They're predominantly in Europe. They didn't come to North America according to the narrative. And again, I always preface this with according to the narrative, because I don't really have any proof otherwise, other than some things we'll show in here. But in America, they came around in the 1800s, mid to late 1800s. So where do they start? Now, one of the things I don't know if you guys are familiar with ley lines, but one of the things that I also am trying to tie these in with is, are these star forts tied to the ley lines? How do they work with the ley lines? Are they placed? Where's their placement? And so we'll start looking at things like that as we go through that. And you start looking at things like sacred geometry, different shapes that frequencies hold, something called cymatics, which is a really cool thing that I didn't really get into ever. But when I got into star forts, I'm like, wow, this makes a whole lot of sense. So one of the terms I want you to think about before we get started here is battery, right? And battery has multiple meanings. It's a we think of it as a traditional like Duracell battery, right? But then it can also mean like an emplacement for fortified guns, like a fort, somewhere where you can, a defensive position, so to speak. But then when you look at the battery also, though, there's multiple layers to the battery that make it work. And most of the battery is under the surface. Okay. So now let's move on to star forts. And what are star forts? So what we have here is a list of, some of the nations that we'll find them in. Like I said before, it's upwards of 70. And I say upwards of because with Google Maps, people are finding more and more of them, or remnants of them, almost on a daily basis. There's some great channels out there like Autodidactic on YouTube. John Levy has done some work on star forts, but you look at these things and what do they look like?
Stars,
snowflakes, right? I mean, and that's where they kind of get the name. But you think about this now, think about this being built in the 1500s. Okay. The precision that it's built with, it's just perfect, right? And how would they be able to do it on the ground without the aerial view? Because we're told they didn't have the aerial view back then. So this is a major feat of architecture. So when did they start appearing? According to the books, it's about the 15th or 16th century. Today, like I said, the number varies, but there's anywhere from about 1,600 to 6,000 star forts that exist today. And like I said, the number could be upwards of 10,000, because like I said, they're finding remnants of these things on a regular basis. So what are they? Basically, and this is, any of the people that are into alternate history kind of laugh when you hear this. Of course, they have to tie in Michelangelo with these things, a famous Italian he supposedly was one of the creators of this, and it was like a defensive purpose. They did it to counter what was it, cannon fire and things like that, because if you think about it, and we'll get into this here in a minute, the old structures of the castles, which this is basically what followed from castles. Okay, there were castles that were just these vertical fortifications that were usually, located on a hill and had minimal defensive structures other than, what they're known for is a moat, right? You typically have your castle with your moat around the outside and, maybe some killer crocodiles if you're lucky or not. But the one thing that the quote that I found interesting from this, they said the Renaissance was hypnotized by one city type, which for a century and a half was impressed upon all utopian schemes. This is the star-shaped city. So supposedly from, the mid 1500s up through the early 1700s, these things were this was the thing to build. Now, you look at these, and I mean, there's some that are just phenomenal structures. I mean, so you look at it, and for the most part, no two-star forts are identical. You'll see some with similar shapes, maybe the size varies. So you start to think about, okay, is it just based off the terrain? What are these things built for? And did the people who were building these, did they have a better understanding of nature than we do? Was there some other reason they were building this other than a fort? One of the things you find that's interesting in the books that I've read, or not books, but like encyclopedias, documents, it said prior to 1812, there were a lot more star forts on Earth than there are today. Now, anyone that knows history and those who aren't familiar with history, basically 1812, you could almost consider World War I or World War Zero, some call it, because you had the Americans and Americans and the French essentially fighting against the British and the natives in America. And at the same time in Europe, you had Napoleon and the French battling the Russians, the British on that side. So there was a lot of destruction going on in 1812, and a lot of these forts supposedly were destroyed. Now, like we talked about before, why did they need the Star Fort? Well, the predecessor to it was the castle, right? And the problem with these was, as the cannons supposedly developed in their lethality, these things were just sitting ducks. It was just a matter of time before enough cannon fire would take out a castle, break the walls, and you could siege it and take it over. So what they decided to do was to put mounds around the outside, not only, as a defensive barrier, but they put them on angles so it would absorb the cannon fire. And you look at some of these, I mean, some of these you'll notice, like this first one here, this one was an existing castle. And what they did was they landscaped it out into a star fort. And then on the right, what you'll see here is what's called a star city, where it's essentially an entire town within a star fort. Now, one of the things that you keep seeing around all these star forts is water. Okay. And one of the things that we know about water is it's very conductive, right? It has a lot of properties to it. It can produce electricity, it can move frequencies, it can do a lot of different things. And that's one of the things that you see in almost every single star fort is the presence of water. Were these things expensive to build? Well, not really. I mean, yes, they were from a man labor standpoint, but for the most part, aside from the brick, they were using the land as the design. So it's, now the question is, how did they move all this? Right? I mean, they didn't have any electrical tools at this time. So, and if you look at these, either they were moving massive amounts of land, or they were channeling massive amounts of water to fit the land, or a combination of both. So the last kind of reason why they created these star forts, if you think about the old castles, right, they usually had the rounded towers. Well, the rounded towers, if you look just essentially south, if you're at the top, is what's called a dead zone. You essentially cannot fire down there, so it leaves you vulnerable from a defensive position. And based on the other towers, they can't cover that blind zone either. So with the star fort now, with all of these different angles here, these are all positions where they could put artillery, they could put defenses, arrows, whatever. Now they could cover. There's no blind zones, or dead zones, they call them. So that's where we are with the star fort. You know, it does have technical names to all of these different little positions here. Each one does serve a purpose in as a defensive battery, so to speak. But if you look at it also, and you look at the shapes, and we think from a frequency standpoint, we start seeing some interesting correlations between these forts resembling different frequencies, and not necessarily just being defensive positions. Because I don't know about you guys, but this seems a little excessive for a defensive position, unless what you're guarding in the middle here is like the most valuable treasure in the world. And like I said before, these things were prevalent all over the world. So it's not like these were unique to one area. They were all over the place. So unless there was things that were, you know, extremely, extremely important to guard, these things as defensive positions seems like a little bit of overkill. So what you'll see here, these are the slopes, right, that we talked about. So the ground would be down here. You would have to get up this slope. Then there would be a little area, a traverse area where you could either have troops or whatever. And then you get to the first defensive position, which is the ravelin. And then in between each ravelin, you have a bastion. Okay, so these things are heavily fortified. If you just think about putting a cannon on each one of these, and then throwing some artillery folks in the middle, and, you know, good luck trying to get up the hill and pierce this fort. Now, on the other side of it, these hills, some of them were up to, 30 yards thick. So we're not talking about, these paper thin walls here. We're talking about, yards of dirt, stone, anything they could find to build these things up. Here's a couple cool examples. Wow. This one on the left here is in Portugal, and it's built on a hill. And one of the interesting things that you'll see, even the hill is carved to match the slope of the fort, all the way down to the base. And I just found that to be, it's just amazing. How could they do that with such precision? And then we look over here on the right-hand side, and up here on the top is Tilbury Fort. And one of the interesting things about that one is it almost looks as if part of it has fallen into the water, right? Because it's like 3/4 of a star over here. And if we could look at the whole thing, up here would be the tip of the star. So either they just built the star as is, or something happened and pieces of it fell. And you'll see that on multiple examples as you look at different star forts. And this is what I'm talking about when you say, we're finding pieces of them or outlines of them, because a lot of times, post 1800, once the aerial weapons and long range missiles came into play, these things supposedly became useless. And so a lot of the times they were just destroyed.
Question for you.
Any questions on any of this so far?
So this one right here in the top left is obviously from the graphic. That's number 14, right? 2 slides up. But is this like on a hill of any kind? So it's like as it goes into the next layer, it gets higher and higher and higher, or is it just flat? So they literally have to go through one wall and then the other wall and then the other wall and then the other wall as they continue.
It looks like
if you look at this, if you look at this picture, you're gonna you're gonna come up, and these points right here on the tip are on one level.
Oh, I
Then
see.
you
This is the
have to
same
go up
image right here.
up a level here. Yep. And then you get to the middle, and then that middle one is even on another level. So you're going through 4 layers to get to the center point.
Gosh, that's wild.
And
this
what's
reminds me of
interesting,
Clash of Clans.
yeah, right.
What a
It's
tremendous
crazy.
endeavor.
And there are some games where you can build star forts, which is kind of cool. I didn't know that until I looked into, started researching these things, and they'll fool you because some of the pictures from the video games look as real as these. And you know, you got to be careful what you put out there. But one of the interesting things, especially this one on the left, notice in the middle, in the almost dead center of it, is the highest point. Right. And when we start thinking about possible you know, energy and frequencies and emitting or receiving frequencies, we'll see that there's always, you know, not always, but usually buildings that have some height to them, that have spires on them, whether it's a cathedral or just a tower. And that's one of the common things you will see as we go through these.
It's like a wide base radio tower.
Yeah, basically. And that's what we're kind of looking at. I'm going to skip through some of these because they're just kind of redundant. There are multiple types, right? And they kind of named them. There's no official names to them. They're, you know, kind of 4-point, 5-point. There are star cities, there's hedgehogs, and I'll show you some examples of these different ones. But one of the things I want to, you know, kind of throw out there is some of the possible purposes of the forts, right? Obviously, there's some defensive purpose to them. Now, is there some energy grid or energy storage potential at them with the water that's all around them and things like that? Are they used for some sort of hydraulic engineering or water management? Because one of the things that we'll see upcoming here is the fields that surround these things are just amazing in themselves. Is it some sort of communication grid, you know, where these things set up in a certain layout where they could communicate with one another?
Now, Matt,
yeah,
sorry if I had missed this. What is the official purpose? Like, what they're putting out, the purpose of these star forts?
They are defensive bastion forts. They are batteries. Okay, they're strictly defensive positions that were built. You know, the French built them to keep out the Spanish. The Spanish built them to keep out the French and the Barbers, and then the Americans built them to keep out the British, supposedly. So that's the story that they stick to. And what they're saying is basically they spread through colonialism, right? Okay. And as these colonies were set up, you know, the Portuguese were known to build these. The Italians built them as well. So you'll find them all over the world. I mean, they're on every continent. You know, there's even some debate that there's some in Antarctica. I haven't seen any real good evidence. I've seen a couple Photoshop so far, so I don't have any pictures of it. I won't put that crap out there unless it's, you know, verifiable.
I'll say it. They're in Antarctica too.
Yeah, yeah,
there's pyramids down there, so I don't see why not.
So the official reasoning for this is just the next step or evolution in the castle.
Yes. And what they were able to do with these is put them on the ports too, or near ports, right? So it was almost as, you know, it took kind of a dual role where they could control ports. They could also serve as outposts, things like that.
So if I know Matt, like I think I know Matt, that's not what they're really for.
That's not what, you know, a lot of people I talk to, you know, you start looking at all these things, and it's, and, you know, as we'll go through this, you know, hopefully, you know, I'll open your minds to saying, oh man, maybe, possibly it could be some of this stuff, you know, and especially when we get into the frequencies, because I knew nothing about frequency other than, you know, I'd listened to some healing frequency music along the way for some health issues. But you start looking at this and it'll get a little bit deeper. Now, a little one that I throw out there as kind of a, a laugher and just really kind of out of left field is, what if these things are kind of a GPS of the past, right? They're just they're a navigational landmark for airships or something that is up above for air travel.
So that was one of my first ideas here, right? Because there are some sharp edges and stuff, and I'm not saying that it's impossible for ancient civilizations to build something like this. But if you look at one of the more popular theories as for pyramids and other like structures that are found all over the world, let's just go to the most popular one, the Pyramid of Giza. They're made purposely in line, or perfectly in line with Orion's belt, and even others from vast differences in space are also aligned on a much bigger scale with Orion's belt. So I'm curious if there's any aligning, or if I'm jumping too far ahead on you. I do apologize, but I wonder if there's any aligning to any star systems. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's an interesting question, and that's something I'm still digging deep into, because there's not a whole lot of information, like I showed in the beginning, about how do these things tie with things like ley lines, right? And how do would these tie into some sort of bigger system,
right?
And I haven't quite found that yet. Now, I've read some stuff about cathedrals, especially cathedrals in France, and how their alignment is aligned with some astrological things.
So there's a good tie right there. Just ley lines in general, right? Ley lines is something that we're going to eventually have to spend an entire episode talking about. When you talk about the paranormal topics in general, John Keel was a very popular author who wrote a lot about the relationship between ley lines and some of the odd things, such as he dug into cryptozoology, ufology, the paranormal, everything, and he was slowly creating this picture with ley lines. I'm not going to dive too far into it, but if these also have a connection with ley lines, this could go in a very interesting path.
And that's where I'm going with it, right? Like I my, and this is my personal belief. I based on what I've looked at, I tend to believe that these structures were part of a larger energy circuit, right? The natural energy. So they were harnessing natural energy using their frequency shape, and the way that they were aligned and where they were placed to maximize the energy around them, whether it's using the water, whether it's using the frequency of the different shapes, right? Because as we'll see as we go into this, the different shapes have different frequencies, and as you emit certain frequencies into water, it will take different shapes, and it will resonate at different shapes and resonate at different frequencies. So that's where I go with this. And what I think of is the key is the water, right? You always see the water around these things, and it's a very important thing in life and in general. And so as we look at some of them, they get wild. I mean, this one here is from Italy, and it kind of looks like, the wheel, right? You start getting into that. And this one was built in 3 stages, which is interesting because you have the initial ring, which is tight with the star fort that you'll see kind of around the immediate perimeter. And that was built in the late 1500s, early 1600s. Then you have this second layer that's built here in the mid to late 1600s. And then in the 1800s, they decided to put the final layer on, which extends way out. It goes, from the perimeter here all the way out. And this one really interests me, especially from, looking at it and just visually. It has so many things that it looks similar to. And one that comes to mind right away is the Mayan calendar. It kind of looks like that. It kind of kind of looks like CERN in a sense. And I'll show you that here in a second. But what I want you to understand, if you look at the scale here of these walls,
It's huge.
compared to the vehicles there, I mean, we're not, like I said, we're not talking about these, 8-10 foot mounds. I mean, these are 30-40 foot high walls that are if not more thick than they are high. Just massive things. So yeah, here is the connection that, if you look at these, man, there is some eerie resemblance here.
Always with that hexagon shape too, man, which catches my attention.
Yep. And you look here and you got the 8-pointed star in the calendar, and then but then you go out here, Jeff, and it gets us out to the 10-pointed star.
10-pointed star. Yeah, we talked about that last night. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, but these are just, now here's the thing that's interesting. You look at the structure and you're like, wow, man, that's a lot on the top. What you don't realize is, and what I talked about before with the batteries in the beginning, usually more, at least 50% of these structures is underground. So what you see on the surface is surface layer, and then there's more underground. And you look over here on the right and you see, we're not talking about, little wood tunnels here. These are vast, extensive brick-laden tunnels that, they used supposedly as ammo depots and living quarters and things like that. And we'll get into maybe some alternate uses for these over time. But, you start looking again, we're talking, guys, this is underground, and this is, pre-industrial revolution. So they were doing this all by hand somehow, which makes it even that much more fascinating.
And they're arches too, so they're incredibly strong.
Yes. Yeah.
Seen a lot of brick.
I was gonna say in that last photo, that's some impressive bricklaying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that, and that's just it's master craftsman work. Now, you want your mind blown? Check this out. Okay, this is Fort Jefferson, which is built in the Florida Keys. They took 16 million bricks to build this thing, and they built it out in the middle of the ocean. So, I mean, look at if you see the indenture over here on the lower right, look how thick those walls are. I mean, it's just the structure itself is mind blowing. And
they
there
shot
used
that
to be
one spot with a cannon, and they were like, "Oh, never mind."
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about it though, think about how ineffective cannons would be against that, and that's the point they got to, was that, they weren't worried about cannon fire, I don't think, with these things. And again, this one had a huge lighthouse in the middle of it that was taken down. But again, it had that spire in the middle that could have been some sort of, antenna almost, if we're looking at it from that perspective.
Is this the same fort that is in the Pirates of the Caribbean? Like when they go to that spot, I feel like this is where they were filming.
It could be. I've never
random.
seen one of those movies, random. Unfortunately.
Random thought. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we'll just go through a couple different examples. This is the 4 point. Obviously, I mean, it's self-explanatory. It has 4 points. Usually these are on the smaller side, and these can go back as far as some of the 12th century. They give credit for these ones, and this was mainly had one building in the center of it, which is interesting. So then we move on to the 5-pointed, which again looks like a star or a snowflake. What's interesting though, and one of the things that I found interesting as I started looking at these is, I always wanted to pay attention to where the tip of the star fort was pointed. And if you look here, I mean, it's interesting that they put it here because it's not out in the water, but it's also not protecting the bay. I mean, I don't see this as a major defensive structure here. If we're looking at it as such, I mean, there's multiple areas to land prior to getting to this. So this is kind of one of the pictures that I find to kind of throw a little bit of intrigue into maybe they're not just defensive structures. But you look, and what I was talking about with the point, if the point, it usually tends to be pointing back towards the land. And if we were going to say that these things could possibly be some sort of energy weapon, you would want the point pointed out at your enemy that would be out in the sea, or not on the land, because they're probably not going to attack you from there, because if you've gotten pushed at this point, you're screwed from a defensive standpoint. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think about when I look at these things, because looking at that, it doesn't seem like it's very defensively imposing. Now we look at the precision of it. This is built in the 1600s, and the way that they could work the landscape, with such precision, it's really mind-blowing.
I mean, when I look at that, I'm thinking that water is an excellent barrier. Like, so say, for example, there was a sea landing, right? You have this big old land bridge that's right here. So no one's going to take their ships, park it up against that land bridge, and then drag them over to then use inside that big old giant moat, which I'm guessing looks like it's probably more than 100 feet wide, right? That's a huge thing. I mean, it's pretty impressive, but that whole bottom end right there is just a big funnel. So it's just like, sure, if you can make it over this land bridge, we're just going to funnel you into the center point, blowing you apart the entire time. So for me, as a defensive strategy, it's perfect, because they would have to abandon their ships on one side, then get over on foot, and then have to contend with water while everybody has their archers or cannons or whatever all along this wall as it goes in and out, and they're just tearing them apart. So I see, like, even like some of the other ones where it's just, it's just land all around and then water. What army is crossing over the land and think, oh, we need boats to attack this fort, until they come up on it and they realize there's a 30-foot drop and a 200-foot moat and then a 40-foot wall. It's just a perfect barrier. So if they already had a lake, build it right there. But I see what you're saying. From from a land perspective, it would be but from a waterway, it would be a perfect defensive spot right there.
It's like how he was talking about with the blind spots too, right?
Oh yeah, that's perfect.
I mean, I'm
looking spots.
Well, I'm looking at the main star figure, right, that goes along the moat and everything, and how the incline, up to what I'm guessing is a modern sidewalk now, that probably wasn't there when it was originally built. But not only do you have to cross this water, then you have to get up to this steep hill. Like, that looks pretty steep to me. And not only that, but there's nowhere along these hills or these inclines where you can hide, right?
I love that. Yeah, what he was talking about with the like the walls of the castles and stuff. People used to be able to get like right here, and then the archers up here couldn't hit them because they'd have to hang over and expose themselves to get straight down. And this circumstances like that, it's probably too steep to climb up, so they're over here at the bottom and they're just angling it and just blowing just killing all of them. It's nuts.
If you had a decent amount of people defending this, it would be damn near impossible. It would be, I mean, without modern military weapons, this would be a hell of a defensive stand. And Matt, I am very curious as to where you're going to go.
Yeah.
Because
how did they figure it out, Matt? How did they do it? Tell me.
well, and the other thing too is you're absolutely right. Think about it. They're funneling you into certain points, right? It's not like the castle where you have four corners. I mean, here you can't attack the points really. You have to try and go for the flat side, but that's funneling you into a kill zone essentially. So from a defensive structure, the star pattern is so much better than any sort of castle structure setup from a defensive standpoint.
So it sounds like that if this thing runs produces energy in any way, it runs off the blood of its victims.
Dude, I was literally
Fear.
like, I've been already theorizing about this with like the ley lines and like sacrifice stuff and like the blood. Yeah, I'm already there, dude. I'm thinking about it.
Well, and if you really want to get crazy, if you're thinking, frequency and energy, and we can go into, they had, possibly direct energy weapons. You think of things like in the Bible with the walls of Jericho, where they took that down with frequency, with sound. So they could have had the weapon to prevent you from even getting close to this thing. And that's one of the ideas I've mulled around also on these, is that, the shape of the fort could give out a certain frequency, and it could be, used as a healing purpose for its people, or B, it could be used as a weapon against its people or any invading peoples.
So let's say that they did have a sound weapon, right? Sound, it bounces off of flat surfaces, right? And you look at the angles of some of these star forts here, there's a lot of theories and a lot of proof out there of sound-based weaponry, and when you get more into the infinite rabbit hole side of the soundproof weaponry, you get into the past, the far history. Like, when did they start having this stuff? Like you said, I don't know anything really about the walls of Jericho, but from what you said, it sounds like they were using sound to take down the wall. Again, I don't know anything about that.
They walked around the walls for 7 days blowing their trumpets until on the seventh day this massive wall surrounding the city collapsed on itself.
Really?
Yeah, all the Israelites walked around blowing their trumpets until it just.
That sounds like a sound weapon, or trumpets. But
supposedly they were using ram's horns.
Yeah, but 100,000 people blowing their horns and vibrating the walls until they collapsed because it was just deteriorating them.
But what I'm kind of picturing here is I'm an aviation electrician, and I love the wizardry of electricity and stuff, and frequencies and stuff. It really rocks my socks. That was so dumb. But anyways, I'm trying to be appropriate here for our fans, and but it I'm picturing like a Wi-Fi wave. If people are listening to this and they're trying to kind of understand what I'm trying to say, like, think of a Wi-Fi wave. Everyone knows what a Wi-Fi wave looks like, right? It's crazy that people know that, but they're unfamiliar with sound waves. It's very similar to sound waves we understood way before Wi-Fi waves, but they work similar, right? It gets absorbed by certain surfaces and it gets deflected by others, and when you come across these sharp angles, not only can they bounce off of something if they're not perfectly dead on, but this also looks like they can take a sound weapon and use it against you in some sort of way and deflect it back to you, which is especially the ones with the multiple cuts, like the 8-sided star that we're seeing right now on the screen here, may not be as good for it, but some of the other ones that we saw earlier would be like, if you try to come at that with a sound weapon, that would not be a good time for you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You mean because of the angle deflection?
Oh yeah.
Just throw it out that way.
You see the ones, I mean, where you can't even count the amount of angles there are on it, but yet still, you can't find a blind spot. These are pretty interesting. This is not, Matt. This is good stuff. I'm excited on a whole other level with this stuff. Like, normally, I'm really into the paranormal and everything, but this is just really cool to see, like, this old architecture and think of the possibilities I'm also a shill and a pog. Okay, I'm currently active duty Navy, so the whole war thing, kind of, what did I say earlier? What was that stupid thing I said? Rocks my socks. There we
Rocks
go.
your socks. Oh, war and death and destruction.
War and death and
Kill
just
them all.
the perfect defense.
Water the flowers with their blood.
Use your blood for my flower garden. Oh, they make the perfect cucumbers.
Oh, bone meal.
Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry, man. This is cool stuff.
No, and these ones are the ones that really interest me, and these ones are called the hedgehog, star hedgehogs, and this is what I was talking about before. So either the other half of this is underwater now in the ocean, lake, or bay, whatever this is connected to, or they built this with all of the points pointing back towards the land, which is, maybe they're just defending from a land attack, so be it. But what you'll also notice here is you start seeing up on the top, you see these fields. And what these do is these canals that surround the star fort also feed these fields. And what's interesting about these fields is the crop growth rate in these fields is so much higher than the land around them, which I found real interesting. So there's something going on with these star forts and these fields that surround them. Because and some of them are quite extensive. I mean, I'm trying to see if I can where did we go? We went the wrong way. Where's the hedgehog? Here we go. I'll get back to that one in the fields here in a second. There's just two more types. This is called a megalopolis, and this is basically think of like Manhattan, right? And it's just a giant, and you'll see the star structure, little pieces of it still remaining over here, but the majority of this was all surrounded by star walls, and this was built in the 1600s. So I mean, it's massive. So massive.
That's massive.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't comprehend the extent of it. And what they have inside is, it's a city inside. There's this. These are also interesting ones. These are standalone cities. So this is where the entire city is surrounded by essentially a moat, a river, a lake, whatever it may be, but it's built inside the waterway. And there you find these all over Europe, and they're really, really cool looking things. Another one's a split. And this is interesting because, again, it goes back to, we can look at it. Was this at one time one large connected and eventually it eroded, or it was defeated and these canals were used and they kind of revamped and set up here and set up shop this way? Or were these built this way, around the canal, and, this 4-point has its purpose over here, and then this guy over here has a purpose, and this guy over here has a purpose. Don't really know, but again, you'll see multiple. It's not like a one-off. You'll see these. Yeah.
Sorry, Matt. This is actually a really good example of what I was trying to talk about before, where it could split up sound. So you see, what would be the strategic point of having these little points, right? You see that you have this big V, and inside the V, you have a pyramid shape. You see what I'm talking about, everybody?
Yep.
Yeah. So, right, actually,
and so you have these up here.
Come down to the very, very southern tip, the very short, or the very lowest tip on this picture.
Oh, down here.
Yep. Right. Keep going down just a little bit more, and follow this wall up to your left about the 10 o'clock position. You see that right there. This guy right here. You see how every single one of these cuts has one of these in here? What would be the defensive purpose for that without it being a form of deflection of some sort of waves? Right? That's what this looks like to me.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, instead of instead of the structure itself emitting the weapon, that it's a defense for a weapon being fired at it. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, just looking at it, you know, and I've seen this exact structure along these walls and a lot of these examples already today. This just alone shows that there very well could have been sound-based weaponry back then. And something like that, like what other purpose could that be? Like everything here, you have everything set up to where there's a purpose for everything, right? The moats, the sharp angles, you know, to create no blind spots, to the steep hills and whatnot. But what is the purpose for that? That is literally there to break something up. And what would it break up? The only thing it could break up is a wave, whether it be a sound or a frequency, you know, a frequency wave. That literally looks like it's there to deflect and break up or break up a frequency.
Well, anybody who's done any kind of sound engineering stuff, we've all seen acoustic panels. That have that same structure. So yeah, you're absolutely
right here.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at this shit.
I was gonna say it looks like the soundproofing that's right here in front of me.
That's exactly what it looks like. I mean, because there's no physical reason for it. You know, I mean, I guess those are where the guards would stand, but also the guards would stand out on the very far tips. That would be like where you can get the best visuals of everything that you need to keep an eye on. Inside those little cuts right there wouldn't be the best visual places because you're cut off visually to your left and to your right, you know, by all the other structure there. But if you're out on the tips, that's where your structure, your visual defenses can really thrive. So I don't see any physical reason for that to be there other than to cut something invincible.
How much you want to bet that someone saw this setup and they thought about making this for like the panels on the F-35 to eliminate radar for it and stuff by having all the crazy angles.
That's a perfect fucking example. That's a perfect fucking example. Seriously. The fucking F-35, right? And you know, a bunch of other fucking
easy with the
I've never seen Jeremy this excited.
He's freaking out.
a bunch of visual or a bunch of classified military aircraft that, you know, I know the names too, that I really can't say. And like the LCSs and shit. And it's like they're all these fucking sharp angles, and the reason why is because fucking radars and shit can't pick them up because they deflect off of them. That's what that shit is, man. I'm telling you right now, there's no other reason for it. There's no other reason for that little bump right there in the crevice.
Yeah,
no other reason.
So listen, here's the thing, okay? Matt, we got to get to the juice of this. I'm watching Jeremy freak out right now. I'm watching the clock. I'm like, oh, we got to get to the juice of this. So like,
all right,
how do we tie that in with what he's saying right now? Because I'm with you. I'm here. I'm ready.
If you're listening to this on Spotify, stop. Go watch this on the Paranormal Network. You need to see what
I have no idea what we're talking about.
This is going to be the worst audio episode ever. But if you go and watch this on the Paranormal Network, you're in for a ride, Matt. Matt did a great job putting this all together. This is extremely impressive, Matt. Thank you.
And you get to see Jeremy get all excited like that.
That
was great.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look, Jeremy, and this goes to your point. Look at all these little points. It's just like it's a giant deflection system. I mean, that's what you look at these, and that's what you keep seeing over and over again.
See, there's the cuts right there. There's a whole bunch of them. There's even outverted ones up here. There's inverts and outverts
right here.
Yeah, they're creating this for a defense against something that from a technology that we don't believe is from that time.
Or on the my on the opposite side of it, they could be radiating something from within outward.
They could, but and
not as likely.
And this is I'm curious as to where you're going with this, but I'm looking at this, and if this is something that's supposed to amplify or produce a wave, you're going to have a hard time controlling where it goes. That, you know, your directional
Go everywhere.
Yeah, that is something. If it does go everywhere, that's definitely something that they're going to be able to do with this. And it's just like, well, you know what, we don't have technically a need for a directional shot. Let's just nuke them with
force
whatever
field, bro. Like, you ever seen Black Panther when they have the force field that encompasses the whole city or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, and we were talking. I'll just breeze through this, but you guys got to see it just to believe it. Is the gardens that they have outside these places? I mean, you look at some of these things, and they're just. I mean, for an eyesight, they're just amazing.
Phenomenal.
They're just
Wow,
geometrically perfect. I mean, this one kind of looks like the layout of DC if you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, do you have a
but
picture
these
of
are
that?
all gardens that are just outside of these star forts, or some are contained within the exterior walls of them, you know, on some of those crazy points out there after the fact. But, you know, they're just exquisite. I mean, the layout is so unbelievable. Again, here's some more of the defensive explanations of it, right? You look at the different points that they are use. Again. Yep. And that's, you know, you look at it, and that's, I mean, they're saying it's coming from, and it's interesting they use the cannon, because I tend to think that if there is a sound weapon, it would be something of a cannon, right? And they've talked of ancients having these cannon, sound cannons that they would use. And like you're saying, if they're going to use that against these, this is a perfect defense.
The best defense against sound or waves or anything is a porous or a soft material or jagged edges. One of the two. If you're going to have a hard surface, then it's got to be rigid, and it can't be smooth, or it's just going to get destroyed.
Yep. This is Fort McHenry in the United States. All right. This is where the Star Spangled Banner was supposedly created, down in Baltimore.
Very cool.
This is an old one from Italy. That's just kind of a really, I just find these things fascinating, that how cool they are. Gosh. And, you know, the detail they put into them.
Not to mention, it's just like, even, I mean, we're talking about the defensive angles and all that stuff, but behind those angles, it's not like it's just a wall that's standing alone by itself. Behind those angles is a billion tons of dirt and rock. And just like,
and how did they move it, right? What manpower did they have to be able to move this stuff? And you know, I mean, obviously, like here, you could you know, drain it, get all the water out, and then build, but still, and then obviously undam it and let everything back in. But man, I would love to see how they did it, because it seems outrageous.
My question is, is it easier to, or would it be easier without any industry type tools that we have today to dig out or to build up? So like, if they already find a lake that has like a spot in the middle, like, okay, you know, dig out, flatten it, and then, you know, create it like that. But building up those walls and stuff, it's like they would have to have the most like perfect spots, because I'm sure that
they're doing both. I mean, just look at it.
Well,
they're
sure, but
digging
like,
out and building up. They're doing both.
Well, sure, but I mean, like, you know, let's say that this picture right here on the right, you know, I can't think that it would be even feasible for them to have found, say, like this structure in the middle, this, you know, star fort wasn't there. It was just this lake, and then they angled it all out on the edges and then built up that center. It would have had to have been, you know, just a landmass, and then they dug out this moat around it. But even still, I'm looking at these lines, and there's so few wavering lines. Like, just on this left-hand side wall, that moat kind of closes in a little bit on that, you know, I guess that would be, yeah, that tip right there. It gets a little bit close, right? Maybe it's like kind of fallen in a little bit, but otherwise, it's pretty much perfect spacing-wise all the way around. And it's just blowing my mind from the very beginning, where Matt said, And as far as we know, they didn't have any way to get an aerial view of any of this. And it's just like, even those gardens, I'm like, holy crap.
The
You know,
math alone,
it's
the
incredible.
geometry to do this is incredible. But to kind of point out something that I noticed a little bit earlier too there, Jake. Sorry, Matt, we're just talking all over you.
That's the way this goes, man. That's why I love doing this. I love hearing other people's interpretations of it because it's good. That's what this is for.
So I've noticed in a lot of other ones too that you can see kind of where the modern aspects of it are and where the ancient aspects of it are. So
Right.
Jeff or Jake, if you're looking at the tip down there, that's about like 830, right? The one that you were talking about where it thins out and everything.
Yeah.
You kind of see like a land bridge right there. That looks like that's like one of the original areas where like they had maybe guards standing there, and that was like your original way to enter and exit this facility or this
Oh, yeah, you're probably
you know what I'm
right.
saying?
And they
And
built
then
up these other ports over here so they could have a freeway going to it in a parking lot in a marina.
yeah. So you put your carriages over here, and then you can and then you have the modern influences, as in like the freeway going in and out, and the nice harbor for the yachts and everything. But I'm curious. So Matt, I don't know if you have any information on this, but something like this, where the water level obviously is not very deep under the ground, because this looks like a sea, or this looks like sea or like a big lake or something right here. But no matter what this is a rather large body of water up here to the north. I'm sitting here moving my mouse like you guys can see it. But I'm talking about the 12 o'clock water body of water up here, the thing that basically covers the entire top of the picture. That is a body of water that's going to determine your water level. I can't remember what they call it, but there's a specific term that you can dig down a certain amount of feet and hit water, right? And it should
The
be
table.
the water table. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that should be level with this body of water, whatever this body of water happens to be. But I'm curious if they have one of those really intense brick underground structures on this, because if they do, that would be a hell of a job to build something like that with a water table that's so close to the surface of the the ground. So I don't know if you have anything on this particular one or anything.
Yeah, I don't know on
this.
this one specifically. I haven't dug deep into this one, but that's something I'm going to look at now, because that's interesting too. I never thought about that, how it would tie in with the water table. But like I said, they from the most of the information that we gathered, there is what you see above is equal as below. So we're talking, if they're building up on top, there's probably 20 to 30 feet below this as well.
It's interesting. See,
which is crazy to think about.
I brought one of my biggest arguments about like lake monsters and stuff when it comes to like I believe actually, Jeff, I think it was on the first time I ever did an episode with you, we talked about possibly being like a sea monster or a lake monster close to where you live, and you're like, you asked me, what do you think the possibilities of that is, and I was like, pretty much zero. Because you have something called a fall line and everything, where on major bodies of land, usually on the eastern side of things, on planet Earth at least, you have something called a fall line, and the West Coast tends to be a little bit more jagged, and the fall line tends to be closer to the ocean, but there's a line that basically goes down the eastern seaboard of the United States, and it's called the fall line. And these are where all your waterfalls are, all the way down. And it's because if on the western part of the fall line, you have large, the geological structure of it is large rocks with pebbles and stuff like that, and they don't move very often. But on the eastern side of the fall line, it's very small rocks and sand and loose dirt. So as the earth shifts and everything, the ground actually, you have the stuff that's on the western side that's hard and bedrocky, and then you have the sand on the eastern side, and as everything shifts, it kind of does this, right? And that's where you get the rivers that come off of from the bedrock, and it comes down, and that's why they call it the fall line, is because this is where all the waterfalls are. And Jeff was asking me if I believe that the lake monster near him, or the river monster near him, was something that could be there. And first thing I asked him was, is it a closed off body of water? I believe the answer was yes. This was a long time ago. I apologize to anybody listening to this, but I basically said there's no chance, because even if there is a cave there in Florida, the entire state of Florida is on the bottom side, the bottom of the fall line, and it's all sand and whatever. And basically I just took, for people listening to this, I took the information, or the knowledge that I use to determine the legitimacy of sea monsters, and applied it to star forts today. So that's pretty cool.
That's quite a connection right there.
Yeah.
Thanks, nerd.
So here's where I get a little, I find it a little interesting, and I have a question about the narrative, because supposedly in the 1850s alone, there were over 90 star forts built in the U.S. Varying shapes and sizes all along the East Coast. Some are small, some are huge. Fort Jefferson we mentioned earlier. You look at Fort McHenry, that's another big one. But these don't have as much of the star shape. I mean, this one kind of even almost looks like the Freemason
Yeah, it does.
square and compass.
Geez, yes, it does.
This is the Statue of Liberty is on a star fort. Most people aren't aware of that.
Where's that? Oh, okay, I see it.
Right up here. Let me see if I have her. I know I did have.
What, while you're doing that,
here you go.
The US ones look quite half-assed.
Exactly, right? So you getting like the Chinese knockoff version in the US.
Right, yeah.
I mean, could you compare these to what we were looking at earlier? And it doesn't really compare.
Star Force from Wish.
Yeah, Fort Pulsaki right there is just an ice cream cone. Like it's baseball diamond on an ice cream cone.
Yeah, they were much more creative with their shapes in the United States, that's for sure, because some of them are just like, might as well. Well, let's see what it looks like.
This is like one of the gremlins from Space Invaders, this Fort Moultrie.
You know what that makes me think, though, Matt, honestly, is that maybe after this last reset, that maybe they were trying to figure out what was actually going on. Like it was like they didn't have the knowledge anymore to build these magnificent star forts, and they were trying to recreate it somehow.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is an old technology, and on some of them we just built on top of what was there previously. And in others, they're like, well, this kind of looks like it. Let's see if we can give it a shot. And they didn't have the technology or the knowledge to be able to do it. I mean, like you said, you look at the angles and all the sacred geometry and the other ones in, from earlier times compared to this, they don't match up. All right. So now we're about to head into the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about magnetic fields, auras, and things like that. So, you think about the human body, right? And there's the human aura, right? You have layers outward of you. And one of the big things during, the Wu flu was keep 6 feet apart. Well, supposedly our range with our aura is about 6 feet. So you can connect to people that are within 6 feet around you without even talking to them. You ever you walk by someone and you get the hair on the back of your neck stands up. There's probably a reason why. You crossed auras with them and your body sent, a little message to yourself. So one of the things, you start looking at cathedrals, other churches, the pipe organs and the star forts and things like that. It's almost as if they're using frequencies and to impact us, and it's almost like you were saying before, Jeff, they had some more knowledge of geomancy, working with the land, of harmonics, of different layouts and things like that. And then also, are these electric, like magnetic, or even etheric type energies that we're dealing with here? Who knows? So this is a cool little example I'll play for you here. So this is just adding some gold dust to the surface of water and then playing different frequencies to it and the shapes that the gold takes.
Yeah, I've seen this on like where they'll put sand on metal or on metal plates.
Oh yeah, we got those too.
Right, yeah. Vibration creates shape and shape creates vibration.
And that's the key part of it, is the shape creating vibration and vibration creating shape, because those are all things that we hear about also in things like we talked about last night, Jeff, like time travel and portals and things like that. It's all stuff you get into. So we start looking at some of the materials, right? And this is stuff that I got from a Robert Borman on YouTube. He's got a great video on this, so I highly recommend you go check it out. And what it is he talks about the rock, right? And the limestone or the rock is associated with water and female energy, essentially. And then he says, and the granite and the firestone is with the male energy. So he's saying that the buildings are charged just in the rock alone with a positive and negative polarity. And then he goes into, just like an electrical circuit, it's not by accident that such techniques are identical to those used in the pyramids, the stone chambers, whose geometric and electric properties are also known to have an effect on the human body. So now there's one more. He goes, I had long postulated that the towers were powerful amplifiers of radio resonance from atmosphere generated by lightning flashes around the world. And that's kind of what I was talking about before with the having these almost antennas in there. And then I came across this video and I was like, oh, this is it right here. So just watch this one. And this is what you were talking about before, Jeremy.
We'll probably have to talk over this because this will be going on the Paranormal YouTube, so the audio might get flagged. But
you'll be good.
Like making fractals,
right?
Yep.
Yeah, this is where it gets super interesting to me.
Yeah,
it's like they were figuring out what shapes were certain frequencies and what those frequencies energy was tied to, and then they would build these structures based off of those frequencies.
Like I don't know shit about that.
Neither do I.
Well,
I don't know nothing about that.
It's just like okay, like let's think about binaural beats for a second, right? Are you familiar with binaural beats, Jeremy?
I know what binaural is.
So basically you put like earbuds in and each ear is playing a different frequency. Sometimes they're the same. It's complicated. There's a lot of different ones, but let's just say that there's different frequencies and it's doing the hemisync thing. It's literally synchronizing the two hemispheres of your brain, which creates all kinds of physiological effects, right? Now, but it doesn't have to just be that, right? Like he was showing with the gold in the water, right? Everything is frequency. So they are tapping into the power of certain frequencies. Like think about people who have used sound frequencies to like cure or like destroy tumors, for instance. Right. So the structures themselves could be actually like amplifying certain frequencies that, like what Matt was saying, could be healing or hurting or whatever.
This is
brain melting.
So we have a buddy, Phantom Phil, probably would really appreciate this particular part of this presentation. I don't know shit about it. Jeff, you said something, man, and it just became scrambled eggs in my head, man.
Something about hemispheres in your brain and tumors exploding. I don't know.
We'll get into it.
Blood makes the best cucumbers.
Can you guys hear this?
One side of the Coke snowflake will turn into 4.
Yeah.
After the first repetition, we'll get 3 times 4 to the first, or 12 sides. After the second repetition, we'll get 3 times 4 to the second, or 48 sides. After repetition number n, we'll have 3 times 4.
This is what you were talking about before, Jeremy, with the different points.
Yeah.
Right? The more points, the different wave it's going to require.
Yeah.
I should have done that line in black.
Yeah. I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh, that one's better.
There we go. Yeah, that looks good.
Regular antennas have to be cut for one type of signal, and they usually work best when their lengths are certain multiples of their signal's wavelength. So FM radio antennas can only pick up FM radio stations, TV antennas can only pick up TV channels, and so on. But fractal antennas are different. As the fractal repeats itself more and more, the fractal antenna can pick up more and more signals, not just one. And because the perimeter of the Coke snowflake grows way faster than its area, the fractal antenna only takes up a quarter of the usual space.
But it depends. In reality, we cannot make it smaller than shorter than first initial wavelength. So its starting wavelength is big. We need bigger size. So we don't know what frequency we use, but we can state that we had free energy fractal antenna, and the first preliminary wavelength was pretty big, and then it was the lowest frequency was pretty big, but the highest frequency was, insane, infinite. What we do? We just take a normal antenna, normal line, and then we use fractal as much as we can, as many times. Triangle, double, and so on. But triangle Koch is not the only fractal. We can use quadrat.
So I was totally like at some point when I was first asking about the additional angles and stuff. I've heard of fractal antennas before, and they do make some wild shapes. And that I was trying to think of that word, but I was like, I can either try to explain this and look like a complete idiot, or I can just say rocks and socks. And I went with rocks and socks, and then it didn't work out very well.
That visual just like I was already getting it, but the visual just yeah.
So it definitely. So the way that they were explaining it is that the structure itself creates the vibration. Is that I don't know anything about vibrations, and I know that there's a whole side of it that a lot of people are really into, and if I had any questions, I would go to Phantom Phil or CJ, one of our old cast members, for that kind of stuff. In dipping into my bag of tricks, that's where I would go. But I don't know anything about that, and still from where I'm at, it still sounds like a defensive thing, and it sounds like it's a defensive thing against a frequency of some sort.
I'm on board with Jeremy. Yeah, that video did something for Jeff that didn't do for me. I looked over at him and he was like, and I'm just like, I'm doing my classic, like, just squinty-eyed mean mugging at the thing.
See, like I've gotten into the
RBF
frequency stuff a lot, like in my own research. So this Like this part of this makes a whole lot of sense to me right now.
And I'm sure there's going to be people that are watching this, and it's going to hit with them. You know, this sounds like something that you got to do a little bit of research and be on the wavelength to understand the wavelengths. You know what I mean? ZJ, get it?
That's a knee slapper.
That's better than rocks and socks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm digging it.
This is good. This is fun.
Yeah. So like you were saying, you know, sound is just vibration in the ether. You know, and we all know the vibrations affect, disturb, and excite all magnetic fields they reach, you know, right? Including our body, which is predominantly made up of water. Different frequencies of sounds and vibrations have different effects on our bodies, right? You can have good vibes or bad vibes. Now, the interesting thing is cymatics. Okay. So what cymatics does is it takes geometric shapes in magnetic fields, and then when they're exposed, it shows when they're exposed to different frequencies and vibrations. So you look at the different star forts, and it's possible that they could have beneficial effects on the area when they're exposed to the right frequencies of sound and vibrations. You know, it's one of those ideas. Now we look at that, and what can we equate it to is Dr. Emoto. And Dr. Emoto, for those that don't know, was a Japanese scientist who worked with water and frequency in water. And he would use different frequencies with water. He would say different words to water and look at them under the microscope and see the different shapes that they would take. So, and we'll look at that here in a minute, but I want to let you guys take a look at cymatics here. And this is an oscillator. Okay. So this is
an old oscope.
Yeah.
An oscilloscope. Yeah.
So,
gross.
So when you look at it, you know, what you see, what I just kept, I hadn't seen one of these in years. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at them like, holy shit, these are all star forts. So let's just let it run. Look, and you can basically stop it at any point in time and find a different star fort pattern. You know, it's so wild. And you just let it run. And, you know, these are basically all different frequencies and different patterns that it'll produce. So, yeah.
All right. So what did you think of that guy?
That's Campbell.
Oh, it's not an oscilloscope. It looks just like one.
It's an oscillator. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Same difference. It's yeah. So here's what we were talking about before, Jeff, with the frequency in the sand, right? So we're going to see different frequencies and what the shape that they produce. And you'll always see they always tend to form geometric patterns. Difference between a positive and a negative. Also, you'll see some that are very clear, and then when it's fuzzy, that means
which is interesting because it's actually, like, if you ever see what cells are doing under a microscope, it's very similar to that as well, you know? And like I say this a lot on my show, that my interpretation of things like the sound of the universe is Om, you know, whether you're looking at it from a Buddhist perspective or, you know, God spoke the universe into existence, like both of those things are sound vibration that create these geometric patterns.
Yeah.
Like spheres.
I'll fight you right now. That was a flat Earth joke for anybody who didn't get it. He was talking shit about flat Earth, but that's okay. We'll let it slide. I'll allow
it. All right. I'm here all night.
Yeah, now we could take a look at, this is where it starts getting, you know, we start pushing the limits a little, taking a little outside the box look at this. And this is the Ouroboros, right? It's that eternal snake eating its tail. And one of the shapes that we saw in the oscilloscope was, it looked exactly like it. And that was also resembled some starfort patterns. So it starts, you start thinking about it, and what ties does it have, possibly to ancient times. The ancient Egyptians could possibly have some ties to this and things like that. And you get into the god worship and things like that. And so, the goddess of this would essentially be Osiris. And so we'll start looking at a little bit. Now, this is where I was talking, Jake, before with the giants. Okay. So Paul from What the Flock TV does a lot of work on Janus, who is a Roman god. He's the god of gods, right? His name means arched passage or doorway. He taught man to make walls to surround a city. And I found that interesting with starforts. He is the god of keys. And if we're thinking about cymatics and frequencies and different keys and things like that, he's known as the skeleton key, the light bearer, the Prometheus of Roman gods. He's the king of the airwaves. So now if we think about what we were talking about before with the frequencies, right? I mean, all of these things that tie in with Janus are things that we found in the starforts, or that could have influenced the development of the starforts. And when you think about the arches, some people say that these arches resemble a magnet, right? It's a giant inverted magnet right there. So they say that they could be transistors that could impact moods or the flow of energy, or amplify energy for that matter also. And so you start looking at him, and the other interesting thing about him, they always showed him with two heads because he was the god of beginnings and endings. So you look at these starforts, and you see his fingerprint on some of it when you look at it. And so we go back to, they actually built a starfort for him in Italy. It was called Numa Pompilius. He built the Ionis Geminis after Janus. And so what this was a walled city. And at times of war, they would open the gates. And you think about that. What are you doing when you're opening? You're releasing all the energy. And then when the war was done and arms were rested, they would shut the gates, they would close it down, and they would keep all of the energy within the walls. So it's just really interesting how some of this older stuff ties in with it as well. Now, he supposedly was the first king of Italy, and he founded Genoa. And Genoa is supposedly Janus and Genoa is the progeny of the giants. Now, another interesting connection between Genoa, Janus is that, you look at their map here and where their colonies were set up. If we go back to the earlier maps, that's a lot of the areas where there was a high concentration of starforts. So just another potential loose correlation between Janus and these starforts. Now let's go back to the frequencies and cymatics and the Dr. Emoto studies. So what you're looking at here is an ice crystal, and on the left it was from severely polluted water. On the right, it was after having been blessed by Dr. Emoto. So it's really interesting what they find in these different cymatic patterns. Now, I found this little bullfrog, and you start thinking about vibrations and stuff, and you watch the frog, and all it does is make a little noise, and watch the ripple in the water. You just see the impact, it gets, it's all the way out. And if you're thinking about star forts and how they're on the water, whatever that frequency they may be, absorbing or emitting can be using the water as well.
They're capsizing ships with just massive swells.
Yeah, right. I mean, the possibilities, and that's what it makes you start thinking about lighthouses too, because they said that the lighthouse that was tied in there wasn't essentially a beacon for light to bring things in. It could have been a direct energy weapon to used against entering ships. And if these lighthouses worked in conjunction with the star forts, now you have quite a massive weapon on your hands.
Think about this, Jeremy, like, because you kind of said it, right? So these star forts have these fingers, right? And you were like, well, like a wave energy weapon would have to like push it from like a flat surface, right? It comes out from that point. But this would be just, going all over the place, right? And I thought about it, well, just spray it everywhere, right? So if these fingers are sticking into the water and they're all emitting this frequency, chopping up the water, ships can go over a wave, the crest of a wave, and down it like that. If it's just all over the place, just, capsizing these ships and stuff. So what if there is something to it like that?
Maybe.
Like it's just like destroying the surface of the water from all different directions.
And you hear about that, right, Jake, in like ancient Roman myths or Greek myths, how all of a sudden this storm came out of nowhere and just swallowed an entire fleet. And it's almost something that's like biblical, and it almost makes you wonder if
the tunnels underneath these things, they're banging a bunch of drums and
holy shit,
sending all that crap out into the water.
Yeah. It's crazy. So you think about it like along those lines. Yeah. So you look at this guy, and all he has like a metal table, right? And he's going to put salt on it. And then he's going to take these different instruments and just drag them on there and watch the effect of the frequency and the vibration on this stuff. It's really amazing what just a slight variation in frequency will do to the pattern and the way it impacts everything.
Oh yeah, they're all lining up.
Imagine hitting that line.
Yeah. It's a mother load right there.
Blow your fucking mind.
Now he's going to grab a different
I won't have a mind after that.
Yeah. What's left of it, right? Wow. And again, look, that looks exactly like that star fort we looked at before.
Yeah.
With the different points on the outside. He's going to do one last one.
This is making me want to hum a wine glass with water in it.
Well, like, dude, you think about like all ancient cultures, right? They would like have hymns, or like they would do like Gregorian chanting, or like all kinds of things, or like even what Matt was saying with like organs in the church, right? Like it was always to invoke these frequencies on the human body. And even inside these giant cathedrals, the inside of the structures were very, what's the word, like acoustic, they were built with acoustics in mind. So you'd be playing on your organ or singing your hymn, and it would be causing these frequencies, and that would be doing things to every cell in your body.
I mean, that's what they do today. That's why all the popular songs all sound the same, all have the same beat, all have the same acoustics. It's because it's supposed to be encouraging something in your brain to want it and to desire it and to want more of it.
Well, yeah. And if you think about that, Jeff, like you're saying, I mean, we go to the church windows, right? And they have sacred geometric shapes usually, and they were known to resonate. Now, if you put one of these, right, these cathedrals or churches in the middle of a star fort, play that organ, those windows supposedly are emanating that frequency out, and then it's going to be maximized by the structure itself. right? The star fort itself, the shape of it, because as we'll see, there's different here in a sec, we'll see there's different shapes for different frequencies, and there's a possibility that these star forts were some sort of frequency harnessing or used as like a healing center, right? They didn't have doctors, hospitals back in the day. You went to church, right? You went to the cathedral and you got frequency healing, and maybe it's a possibility. But so if we look at the water, right, and that's what we were talking about before, you look at this is what people would say to the water, right? And this is the reaction you would get from the water in the shape that it would form. And you're getting all these positive things like honest, respect, love, and gratitude. And then you get I cannot, and it's broken, right? It looks like a half of a perfect star, and then it's just dissolving away. You get to I can, it's a perfect geometric shape. You get to I love you, same thing. And then you get to stupid, and it's just a mess.
This is your brain on drugs.
Yeah, basically, right? So, yeah, and these are just, again, there's another just...
What you are looking at right now is not CGI or computer animation. It is simply a bowl of water with sound playing beneath it. Cymatics is the science of revealing the architecture of sound. Here we have sand on a metal plate, and if you change the frequency of the sound, you can see complex patterns forming. Zooming in even closer on these patterns, you can see what looks like galaxies. The Sufi mystic Hazrat Inayat Khan said, "Divine sound is the cause of all manifestation. The knower of the mystery of sound knows the mystery of the whole universe." It has also been said that sound is architecture frozen in time. So you may want to ask yourself, what type of invisible architecture are you embedding into your subconscious with the music that you listen to? I want you to really, really think about this.
It's pretty wild. Whoa. But yeah, so if you think of these star forts, I mean, maybe, like we talked about before, is it possible that they were connected, a larger network, and they were shooting these frequencies out to people, whether they were healing frequencies or whatever those people were deficient of in that area, that star fort could supplement it with a frequency type healing.
Does anybody else have just a black screen?
No.
No.
What's going on with me?
Not I, sir.
Yeah, I just have a black screen.
Can you see
still black?
No, I can't see anything.
Did you turn off your monitor?
Is the computer plugged into the wall, my friend?
No, it's got power. It's just
unplug it and plug it back in.
It's a laptop.
Oh, well, take it apart and put it back together.
You guys keep going. I'm gonna restart my laptop and I'll rejoin. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Bye.
Yeah. So these are just some different shapes, some different frequencies, right? And these are different planets. Again, you see remnants of star forts. The one I found was kind of interesting. The moon kind of looks like the good old CV. So, but yeah, these are just different frequencies. And then we start looking into, you start looking into the different geometric shapes and frequencies that are produced. And then we look at the rose windows in cathedrals. And, are these windows set up so that cathedral would either emanate out to the town or harness within a certain frequency that could be used to heal people and things like that. That's just one of the many possibilities we have out there. So, and you see that these star forts, they really do start to resemble, these different patterns. And, some people say, yeah, they're just they're just a defensive structure. That's all they are. And I can see that.
Yeah, but Matt, don't be such an extremist, dude. These are just castles, dude.
Yeah, it seems like, you look at something like this and it just seems like an awful lot of work for just a fortification.
That's amazing, dude.
Honestly. I want to say something
insane
towards the cathedrals. That's absolutely incredible. But I want to say something towards the cathedrals. So when Rome adopted Christianity, a lot of the Roman influences and traditions and things were brought in as well. So if they were already into the whole frequency thing, then it makes sense that these massive cathedrals and stuff would also have the same sort of influence. So, I mean, if they were already doing that sort of stuff, and then they adopted Christianity but put their own like flair on it and stuff, and you can see that in some of the practices and things and how it lines up with, you know, Roman paganism. And like they're always like, oh, Easter was a, you know, pagan holiday and all kinds of stuff, right? You see the parallels. Well, if they were already into the whole frequency thing and harnessing it or expelling it or all that stuff, then it makes sense that you could see the geometric shapes inside like the stained glass windows or inside the structures of the buildings and things like that, that it would affect in certain ways like that. So could there have been a reason, you know, a deeper meaning to it? I mean, you know, I have no idea, but it is, you know, to me, it's not a like a I gotcha sort of a thing. I'm just like, yeah, probably, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those, because you think about it, you walk into church and there is a different feeling in those cathedrals. I mean, I went into St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, and it was like nothing I could describe. There was just an energy in there that you just felt as you walked into the building, and then you feel those organs play, and it just reverberates throughout your body. And there's got to be something, you know, when you think about your body being, you know, between 70 and 80% water, and the effect that frequency has on water that we saw in those slides. I mean, it's hard to say that, you know, frequency could not affect. Now, to what extent these buildings or these structures were used, you know, to emanate or harness frequencies, that's what we're just throwing out there, trying to see what possibilities there are. Because, you know, you start looking at different things like cymatics and things like that, and the way that certain things react, and like Jeremy was saying, you look at these and yeah, you can see there's definitely there is a severe defensive advantage to these structures, but in a lot of cases it just seems like an awful lot of work to do these, you know, just as a defensive structure.
I mean, the Statue of Liberty one's pretty lame, but yeah, it's just flat on top. Well, I mean, it steps up, but yeah.
Yeah, the New York ones, for the most part, I mean, Fort Gibson's another one here. It's kind of lame in New York. I mean, they didn't come up with the best. They just kind of put them out in the middle of the water and said, yeah, there you go. But, you know, you look at some of the older ones and they're just really amazing. I mean, this one's interesting because there was originally a castle and they decided to build up around it. And then during the Napoleonic Wars, it got destroyed. But yeah, I mean, some of these things are just, they're works of art. Yeah. But yeah, so that's my look at Star Forts. You know, I'm not claiming to have any answers, and I've had a couple people DM me on other presentations I did that were really butthurt that you would even consider anything but they were defensive positions and they were used as bastion forts, and you know, how dare you? So, hey, it is
those
what it
people
is.
are lame, dude. Okay. Because honestly, man, like, this is not the first time that you have shown me a presentation that was just like mind blowing, you know? And again, like, I was already like I got the idea beforehand, right? Like, you know, I mean, we've talked about it. I've talked to other people. So I had like a broad idea of this already. But when you see it, especially the way that you've got it lined out here, it definitely hits a different kind of way, you know. So this is amazing.
That was cool. This is really cool.
This
was a totally different episode than we've ever done. I mean, we've done some stuff that's kind of, you know, on the fringe of the paranormal, you know, when we deal with multiple universes and physics and stuff like that. We've, you know, time travel, we've done some pretty cool things, but this was a totally different thing. I'm already trying to think about how I'm going to categorize this on the website. I'm gonna have to create a new category for you. They're Matt.
Lost history, man. Lost history or hidden
Lost
history. You know, you categorize it with things like Atlantis or any of the lost civilizations, even, in my opinion. Whatever. I mean, that's why I said earlier, you know, like I feel like a lot of the stuff that Matt puts together, at least in my mind, I put it in that like lost or hidden history category, because that's pretty much exactly what it is, man.
Yeah, no, this was cool. And for those that are watching on the Paranormal Network, that's, you know, because we're still sort of new, and here I am spoon feeding you guys again. We Jake, we don't just cover the paranormal. We don't just cover, you know, UFOs, aliens.
Yes, we do. This was an outlier.
Ghosts.
Don't listen to him.
It is, but we also
never
dive
done anything
into
like
physics.
this before.
We dive into physics, and ever since we've had Jeff on as a co-host, we've dove into similar subjects. You know, we've dove into the Georgia Guidestones, Atlantis. I mean, we're not a one-trick pony. We dive into all aspects of the unknown, and unknown history is definitely within our wheelhouse. And Matt, you did a fantastic job on this. I am very curious as to what the 5-hour presentation looks like. I'm gonna have to try to track one of those down if you've done it on a podcast or on a YouTube video before. Cool, man. That was cool.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, man. Yeah, this is one of those topics that, you know, you say it to somebody at first and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then you get into it and you're like, no, just listen to it for a second. And as long as you got an open mind, man, this is a fun thing to go on. Cause, you know, from, like I was saying before this is kind of can hit on a bunch of stuff, because there's rumors that these were built by giants, right? There's rumors that these things were part of, they were batteries, literal batteries that worked with each other on a, you know, ethereal grid of a natural earth grid to, you know, to produce frequencies and keep the earth in balance. And as these things slowly got destroyed, our natural balance on the earth went away. And now we're at a point where we are today, where things are so chaotic and out of whack of our natural way that, hey, man, maybe they had it right and we're doing it all wrong. You never know.
Jake, did you have something?
Yeah, you call this a bastion fort?
That's one of the names. Okay. Yep.
I agree with that to an extent, but I believe that, I think that it's very interesting that these things seem to have a very fractal-like appearance, or in the many examples that you showed us, the sound waves with the sand and the water and all that sort of stuff, that they seem to be emulating that before that could really be observed in a really good way, right? Like we can see a recording, we can watch it over and over and over again. We can slow it down, speed it up, do all the sorts of things. I'm sure they at one point saw a frog and the way it was emanating that, you know, those sound waves from its body inside of a pond and stuff. But to be able to emulate that in the structure of a design of a fort and stuff like that, you can't deny that it would seem that there was an ulterior or alternate motive towards building structures like this. And yeah, if anyone's listening and they don't believe that sound waves or that sort of stuff can have any effect on your body, go find someone with subwoofers in their vehicle and try to get the brown note and watch you crap your own pants. It's crazy. Like, you know, it just completely, it'll ruin you. I did it one time adjusting my subs, and I was just like, started getting nauseous, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It was all of a sudden, and I realized that low vibrating hum was just destroying my guts. And, you know, and also I wanted to clarify, because I feel like I might get some hate mail. I meant the Easter celebration with the eggs and the rabbits and all that sort of stuff. It's like, why are Christians celebrating that when it's a pagan holiday, right? Or has its origins in paganism. So, but yeah, the influence of that those cultures had on each other, like, And even to your point, Matt, the internal structure of these cathedrals, most of them are very dome shaped on the inside, whether, they all have these various types of arches and stuff. Now you could say that that's for magnetic field reasons or whatever it is, and we could speculate, forever. But certainly when it comes to music and stuff, right? The sound waves are going up and they're hitting those structures and they're coming back down, right? They're coming back down on the people and stuff. And so I would side with you on it that it has a purpose other than just a cool way to design a building or a very strong way to design a building, which could be both, right? But yeah, I was digging this. I was digging this presentation. If nothing else, I really enjoyed seeing all the really cool architecture. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about being in the Navy so far. I'm getting ready to get out and going all over the world and seeing these, massive cathedrals, right? 800-year-old cathedral. They're still holding mass in, and we're walking around looking at all the stuff and, all the castles and everything. But, to see all these, structures where, I mean, we're looking at drawings and that's one thing, but to see an aerial view of some of these forts built at a time, like you said, when there was no way to get an aerial view as far as we know, unless they built a super tall tower on one side and were able to figure out the angle and be like, okay, well, it needs to be, like this. But it's just like, even still, building these, what seem to be perfectly straight lines and perfectly symmetrical edges, along these things. And the amount of earth that had to be moved or, whether that was dug out or put in, it's just absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, I can't look at the research that you did and what other people are saying as far as like how, again, the sound waves work for other things, and say that looking at these structures and looking at that there can't be some kind of correlation, and have my mind just block it off and be like, nope, no way. I'm not closed-minded enough for that. Right. So it's very intriguing. It's very interesting. And I'm so glad that you came on and shared this with us. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
So I got a few questions. The majority of the water used in the moats, do we know if that's salt water? Is this something that's common close to the shore, or is this something also found inland? I know that you had the map up at the very beginning, but I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting, I wasn't really, I didn't really know what I was going to be looking. Okay, so it looks like it's a pretty good sprawl.
You'll see a for the most part, they tend to be inland, right? But you're getting a mix here. Some of these are on the ocean, some of these will be, on the internal coast. Mm-hmm. But so you're going to get a mix of both salt and fresh water.
And then that's another thing to kind of keep in mind here too, is that not every single star fort could be used for the exact same purpose. So, when you started talking about the batteries and everything, one thing that you need inside of a battery is an electrolyte. And one of the, an electrolyte is salt water, water with, or some sort of other mineral in it. Not too hard. And then basically all you really need is two dissimilar metals or two pieces of lead, and you have yourself a battery, as long as you have some kind of acidic or electrolytic fluid in there. You can create a battery which creates energy and whatnot. So that kind of, you have to kind of divert a little bit away from that when you go inland, unless it's in a mineral rich area and there is an acidic,
which Jeremy, these are said to have been on a lot of these. There's a guy out there, Andreas Azertis, and he said that a lot of these are sitting on rich mineral deposits. So
that could be, there could be something here. Could those moats not necessarily just be there for defense, but could they be amplifiers? Because another thing that you have to kind of realize too is that waves, not just the waves on top of the ocean, but sound waves move extremely far. If you remember, if you go back to our Bloop and Julia sounds episode, we were talking, yeah, I know, Jeff, shut up. Love you.
That's it.
So
I wouldn't have called that. I thought it was only been an hour. It's nuts.
That's crazy because it just melted away. But anyways, like I was saying before Jeff rudely interrupted, is so I believe it was the bloop, which was supposedly off of the western coast of South America, but was picked up by microphones or water microphones, whatever they're called, sub phones or whatever, over 2,000 miles away.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, was there another reason other than just defense for water being placed on the outskirts of these star forts? Water is an amplifier for a lot of different things, especially when you're going into sound waves and frequencies and the such. You know, think of electricity. You know, when electricity hits water, it is a conductor. And although it does eventually dissipate, it is strengthened by the influence of moisture. So it's definitely some interesting stuff here, Matt. He got me going. I see the mouse turning.
The mouse is moving in the wheel, man. He's moving around.
It is. It's definitely some very cool stuff.
I've never seen Jeremy react like he did for that one part where he started freaking out and like flopping in his chair. I've never seen him react to that like that in any episode we've done. Almost 100 now. So
all right, we're getting yelled at.
No, this is some cool stuff. You know, it's something different. Not and
wild.
You know, like I said, some people have an open mind and they're like, all right, I'll listen. And then they're like, yeah, this is cool. And some people are like, okay, yeah, I see it, or I don't. But yeah, I'll listen to it, which is cool. And that's why, you know, I like seeing reactions like Jeremy's or Jake when you're like, yeah, I could see that being a possibility. Is, you know, I'm not going to close off to it. And that's the point of this, just getting people thinking and looking at and on top of it, you get to look at these cool old structures, you know, and I eventually plan to hit some of the ones in the US and try and see if I can get a tour of them and check them out and get some actual feet on the ground and see what they're all about. Cause man, they look just unbelievable.
Pull the tour guide into a side room and be like, tell me about the batteries.
Yeah, let's know. Come on, man. Enough of the bullshit. Everything. Let's get real here.
Where do I buy the blood cucumbers? No, I mean, it is definitely cool. I'm sorry, Jeff, but it just keeps coming up. You know, why is the base of the Statue of Liberty a star fort? Is it there for the protection of the statue? Is the statue one of those beacons that you were talking about in the middle of a star fort?
Plus it's made out of metal.
Is it symbolic in some sense?
Well, the Statue of Liberty is not actually a woman, which a lot of people don't realize. It's actually a man, and most people are starting to think that it is.
No, the Statue of Liberty is the Babylonian goddess.
It is Lucifer.
Well, dun dun dun.
Look it up.
I'm gonna take Jeff into the back room later.
Look it up. Remember when I told you to look up weather modification, and then I broke it down, and you guys were like, "Okay, just go look it up, dude."
See, that's another topic that we got since Jeff was weather modification. See,
two out of what? 95.
Whatever, dude. Anyways, listen, Matt, this was awesome. I know we went long.
Kenzar hasn't said her final thoughts.
Kenzar, go.
Kenzar's just been. I'm so amazed by all these. I found this starforts.com website, and I'm just looking at all the different like aerial views of all these different star forts, and they're just incredible.
She's doing her own research.
And I'm baffled.
She's just over here doing her own research.
I'm doing listening. The same thing.
I'm listening. I'm just so baffled by all of this. I don't even know what to say. It's just so incredible.
I'm just messing with you, Kenzar. Yes, it
is. It's been lots of fun. Thank you so much, Matt. I've actually quite enjoyed this.
Good job, man. That's cool. Matt. Cool stuff.
You done good.
And if you ever get more information, I know that you said you have a longer thing. Please let Jeff know or reach out to us and be like, hey, I got some more stuff that I think you guys would like. we'll have you back on, man. If we could build onto this, I've got.
Yeah, this is one of those too where I thought I was done with Star Forts. I did my podcast on it, I think back in like October. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be done with it. Maybe I'll go on a couple shows. But along the way, in the other stuff that I'm researching, it keeps coming up. So it's one of those where I keep adding to it and new stuff keeps coming up. So yeah, if I find any cool stuff, I will definitely let you guys know.
Well, I do appreciate it. And what I mostly appreciate is Jeff squirming in his chair because he's got to go night because he's got to wake up for work tomorrow and he's getting mad at us. But yeah, old big bad Jeff over there needs to go night.
Whatever, bro. All right.
Your bald head on your soft.
Sleep is for the weak, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for coming here.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Blowing our
guys.
minds.
Thank you
It's
for
awesome.
having me.
Absolutely.
man.
Good stuff, man.
Always good to
stuff.
talk to Matt. Thanks for having me on your show last night again. And yeah, dude, I mean, I don't really know how to end these. Jeremy's got to do the outro because I'm terrible with it.
Well, before we do an outro, we got to let Matt tell everybody where they can find him and hit everything he's got going on. The mic is yours, Matt. I mean, we took up 2 hours of your time, so go ahead and do another 2 hours of telling everybody where they can find you. And Jeff just won't go to sleep tonight.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys again. This was awesome. I love meeting new people and Jeff. So thanks for inviting me and hooking me up with you guys because this has been a lot of fun. You can find all my stuff on the Great Deception podcast. I'm on all the major podcast platforms. You can find my YouTube channel is the Great Deception Podcast. I put some of this stuff out there. Some of it gets taken down. But it is what it is. My Instagram page is a lot of cool stuff like this. I do a lot of old buildings and frequencies, old world stuff. So you can go check that out at the Great Deception Podcast. And I just started a Patreon if anybody's interested, where you can get all the videos for the Monday Night Master Debaters, which is another show that I do every Monday night. And those are a lot of fun. We get 3 to 4 other podcasters together and just whatever comes up, we talk about. So it's kind of the anti-intellectual conversation, but it is what it is. So yeah. And then I just started a little merch store. So if you make it to my Instagram, click on the link tree and I got t-shirts with some old world buildings on it. And there will be a Star Fort one coming soon. So that's next.
Sweet.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. All right. Well, that has been another episode of the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. I'd like to say thank you to all the travelers who are joining us on your audio platforms and the visual one with the Paranormal Network on their YouTube page. Again, if you are listening to this episode, I highly recommend you to re-listen to it visually with your eyes. Listen with your eyes on the Paranormal Network YouTube channel. Other than that, this is going to be episode 97. So we are 3 episodes away from our 100th episode. What are we going to do? We don't know yet. Honestly, we're still debating. That's how half-assed we are. But that's it. Thanks, everybody. Matt, one more time, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time in the next path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye.
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 You got to say bye, Matt.
You have to.
Bye.
There it is.